Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Pitch Live. Today, I'm Hannah Cornford, and I am the marketing manager here at The Pitch. And today, we're going to be talking about everything that you need to get your startup finances sorted. So whether you're a entrepreneur or founder who's looking to kind of grow your business and get investment, or whether you have a side hustle and you're just getting started and you want to create your kind of first cash flow forecast, then this is the live for you. I'm joined by two lovely guests today. We have Anoop Rehal and Laura Pomfret. Anoop is a partner at Haines Watts, who provide trusted financial support and advice to startups. And Laura is a co-founder of a financial wellness platform called Financielle. Laura was actually also a finalist of The Pitch last year, 2021. And The Pitch is the UK's largest startup competition. We've got regional finals across the country. This year, we're going to Edinburgh, Birmingham, Manchester, London and Bristol. And then we have an overall final in London in October. And we give founders and startups the platform they need to tell their stories, network with other founders and access investment. Anoop, I'll come to you first. So on that same topic, we've talked about so Laura's very much around personal finances and then having a strong business foundation, but you've talked about kind of keeping focused on your purpose as a business and being really focused on your why. So why does having a strong focus on your business purpose matter for your startup finances?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult when you're starting out, and the same thing with personal finances. The whole purpose of the personal finance budget, and to actually get into it, and I do it myself because I'm a boring accountant. I have a spreadsheet with my monthly cash flow because I need to see what's happening, what's coming out, budgeting for holidays and other bits and pieces. And I think the same thing applies to almost your business in terms of your purpose, because it's so easy to get distracted when you're starting up in a scale up. And I think I've said it before, you're wearing so many hats. So where we specialize with owner managed businesses and all the startups that I've worked with, you're not just the CEO, you're the COO, you're the finance person, you're the HR, you're everything. There's a lot to focus on. There's a lot of things to do. So by keeping yourself focused and actually understanding, okay, what is my business purpose? What is my business driver? You can kind of focus on the key points, and then that will also help drive your finances. So if your key points are, and let's be honest, if you're scaling up and starting up, really, it's about, okay, I need to have my minimal viable product. I need to think about how much you're going to grow this business. If I grow this business, I need to grow sales. Okay, if I grow sales, what kind of team am I going to need? What kind of space am I going to need? How am I going to interact with the people that I need to speak to? Do I need a Zoom license? I know it sounds really stupid to think about like the niche details of what you need, the insurance costs, everything else is kind of born out of that focus. And to make sure you go, right, I'm going to go down this avenue. This is my business purpose. This is what I want it to be, especially with stuff like ESG coming out now as well, and your impact as a business. It helps you kind of structure your finances and say, okay, well, if I want to go down this avenue and I want to focus on this product, these are the bits that I need to think about behind it. And this is how I need to build my financial model. I think if you're not focused enough on your key purpose, it's so easy to get sidelined and distracted in other ways and think, oh, what about this? Or what about that? That seems like a good idea. And then actually your finances, when you're looking at different avenues, especially when you're looking at sales growth, start to get stretched. So if you've only got a small pot, especially at that beginning stage, to really utilize, then actually you need to really focus on where you're going to spend that money and where it's going to be most beneficial to you to help you reach your business goals. You're on mute, sorry, Hannah.
Certainly, yeah. That kind of links quite well to kind of the practical elements that you talk about. So actually kind of developing that kind of cash flow forecast and really understanding, what you've got kind of coming in and coming out and when. And you've talked about kind of real-time reporting and building processes that you can kind of will help your business scale. So how can founders kind of create a streamlined financial reporting process that will actually kind of help them on that scaling process?
Yeah, and I've seen it so many times at the beginning, and I think a lot of the problem is, again, it comes down to that cost element. So a lot of people don't want to look at, okay, we don't need to do they don't want to spend too much money on all their processes on a really robust system. And do you know what? I completely agree with people in terms of what you need to focus on as a scale up. All the clients I talk to, everyone that I've ever worked with, I always say, look, there's no point in having the most fanciest of finance teams and the HR and an ops director, all this at the beginning, because you spent all your money and you haven't even got any sales growth. There's no point to doing all this. Oh, we've got amazing function, etc., but it's not really fit for purpose. In a weird way as well, and a kind of weird audit scenario. When we do audits on clients, it's always like, oh, who's done a check on this, who's authorized it, how many layers. Well, if you're a one-man person business or a one-person business or 3 or 4 people, how are you going to have 5, 6 different levels of authorization? You need to do what's right and what's fit for purpose at your business at that stage. So when we talk about financial processes, all I'm saying is having something in place that you can build on as your business grows, but having a process in place, who is authorizing stuff, who is processing stuff, how does it flow through the system? And if you have those checks in place, then you can grow them as you scale up the business and as you go through. And cash flow, that's kind of the biggest thing that I would concentrate at the beginning. So you can have, don't we sound rude, you could have the best 3, 4, 5 year financial forecast. I'm sure Laura will talk about this as well, in terms of we're going to get so much growth and we're going to get this. How can you have a crystal ball to read the future? You can't. Your scenario has to change. You have to have contingency in there. So, when we build out a forecast, we look at 2, 3, 4, 5 years, but we also build out, this is your conservative, this is your worst case scenario, this is your best case scenario. But actually what we really want to focus on in the next 12 months is your kind of cash flow, is what you're going to be doing as a business, because the forecast isn't set in stone. It needs to be adjustable, because if your business is doing really well, okay, you might bring forward your expansion, your growth. But with that, and I think I've said it before, comes up a bit. So, okay, if we're going to hire 10 more people in the next 3 or 4 months because we need the growth, where are we going to put them? Okay, we're going to have work from home, but we still need a slightly better socialized office space. What about the IT equipment? What about insurance? What about the HR contracts? And that all starts to feed into that budget. And you start to realize that, how that impacts your cash flow over the 12 months. So you might not have more cash now for 6 months, but the good side of it might be, okay, we can go for an earlier fundraise. Or do we have to delay the fundraise by another year or 2 years because actually we haven't got the growth that we want and we feel that we can achieve it? So it's so important to get that in. But the processes don't have to be, to the nth degree where you're doing every single last thing. Everyone's checking every last bit. You need to focus on what you need at your business at the right stages. So I always say there's kind of the scale up stage where you're really just focusing on the business, trying to get the growth in, trying to get the minimal viable product. The second stage is normally the kind of scale up phase where you're really trying to drive the business, drive the sales, drive the growth. And I hate to say it, but I think the third bit is normally around the professionalization, where you look at actually, not that you're not compliant, but how do we bring in those robust procedures and people that we really need now? Maybe you're head of legal, maybe you're actually a finance manager, and looking at those types of roles. So that's the kind of why I think it's so important that you have the processes just down to at least a certain level of what is appropriate for you at your stage.
Yeah, certainly. And that makes sense. And I guess you want to have those kind of checks in place at each stage. But I guess for those people who are kind of saying, okay, but right now I want to get my business in front of investors and I need to get investment and I need all parts of my business to look shiny and on point for investment. How do kind of businesses create that cash flow forecast that kind of woos those investors, wows those investors, and gets them to want to invest and excited about the business?
I certainly think it's about having, I've seen so many pitch decks and so many things get torn apart. And I think Laura could probably answer on this question as well, actually having gone through the process. It's about, again, it comes back to your purpose and making sure that you have it clearly defined in terms of, okay, this is where we are, this is our business purpose, making sure you're focused on what your element's going to be. Making sure you've done your market research as well and how that has fed into your forecast, because the forecast has to be based on something. It has to be based on some kind of analysis. And you may not have the business knowledge. It might be doing something completely different, completely new, but you need to explain why your new product or your new service line is going to be so much more differentiated from what's there already and how that's going to grow. So having, don't try and make up a forecast that you're not confident in delivering or talking through. That's the first thing I would say. So don't make this overcomplicated forecast. Oh, we've got all these numbers in, because the investors will see right through it. Anyone that's reviewing that knows where you are in your business. So they're not buying you for your financial knowledge. They're buying you for your business knowledge and the product or the service line that you're actually planning to do. But they want something robust enough to say, does it make sense? And why does it make sense? How have you backed up that forecast? So my key thing is, even if it's a small forecast, make sure you've got enough research behind it and so enough intelligence behind it, say this is the reason we've come to this is because we've actually had the right knowledge behind it.
Yeah, and you say like even if it's a small forecast, do you mean in terms of time frame or what you include? Like, what do you think are like the kind of key basics that people really need to include?
I think cash flow is the key one. So you can talk about forecasts and forecasted numbers, but you need to keep, I would always say put a cash flow in, because that will tell the investors that you've actually looked at how your money is going to be spent when you're likely to run out. I'd probably have a couple of scenarios as well. So I'd have your conservative estimate and have your worst case scenario and your best case scenario to show that you've looked at the different levels involved there. And certainly, I mean, a 5-year forecast, I mean, that's completely made up, if I'm honest. If I could see 5 years in the future, I would have bought houses a long time ago. And, I would have invested in certain other aspects, and cryptocurrencies, but you can only go so far. And they know that as well. I mean, your first 12 months are the key. 2 to 3 years, you'll have a bit of knowledge, but 3 years plus, I mean, it's very, very difficult. So 3 years for me, as long as I've seen that, and I think most investors that I've spoken to at that early stage are kind of comfortable on those levels. And Laura, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can see Laura nodding away. And actually you mentioned again there about, being really clear on your purpose. So that takes us back quite nicely to what we were talking about at the start, which is kind of like linking your personal finances with your business finances and also your purpose. So Laura, nodding away, if you've got anything to add to anything that Anoop has said, then yeah, we'd love to hear it. But also, like, why is that so important for your personal finances and your why to be kind of key in your financial plan?
Well, firstly, sorry for disappearing. The Wi-Fi completely went, and I'm in a cupboard under the stairs at our office because someone had taken the meeting room that I'd booked. So apologies to everyone for disappearing. And it's such an important element, your personal finances, to being a business owner. Your financial wellness is critical. The pressures of being a business owner are ridiculous. They really are. Like, it's glamorized as like this kind of boss lifestyle, but actually it's very, very stressful. There's lots of upsides, obviously, but there's lots of pressure. And if you're trying to build a business that's meant to achieve this like purpose, or whether it's helping in environment or medicine or food or events, whatever it is, if you are constantly looking about whether you can pay your bills or feed your family or feel well, then you're not going to be on your A game and you're not going to be focusing on the business. Like, I think it's Gary Vaynerchuk says loads about people wanting a big business, but they're not cutting back their lifestyle. And you should cut back your lifestyle. You should really, not be bothered about the BMWs or kind of what you look like. You should be focused on your business, but not at the expense of kind of your wellness and daily family life. There's a real balance. You don't have to be on the breadline to kind of dig deep and build a successful business. Actually, your mental health is really important. So that's why we really think that building your personal financial strong foundation, so being able to manage your own money, what's coming in, what's going out, how much you need to set up your business if you've not thought that through yet, if you're at that really early stage, how long you can go without income if you needed to, because that's all important, so that you can kind of park home so that you can go all in on your business. You have to really think, why are you doing this? Why are you building a business? Because hopefully it's because you not only have a purpose, want to help people, but you want to take an income from it and possibly have a better lifestyle. So some people set up a business because it can be more flexible and they can work remote and they're not going to a 9 to 5. So just remember why you're doing it. And it might also because you want an exit at the end, you want a capital, sum in your life. It's kind of, I've built a business, I've sold it, I've moved on to the next thing. And I see lots of business owners, a lot of self-employed individuals that just kind of in this grind and they're not focusing on the numbers, they're just doing the do. And imagine if you come out of 2-3 years work of a business and actually you'd have been much better off and probably happier not doing it at all. And I think that's because you're not focusing on not only your own numbers early on, but also those like just key business metrics that Anoop mentioned. And yeah, we definitely took the view of a light cash flow forecast. It was reasonable. It was predicated on assumptions that we change, but it's not doing it like Elizabeth Holmes and thinking we're going to make 100 million this year when they'd actually not had any revenue. The investors can see through that. So just treating your early business finances a little bit like your own budget and being as precious about it as your own budget is really important.
Definitely. totally agree with everything you said. And I mean, you share some lovely tips for people who are going through this journey on your TikTok channel, the Financielle Time. So I definitely tell people to check that out. And on that kind of wavelength, I guess, you've mentioned before about bossing your budget.
Yeah.
And, you know, we all know it can be hard to keep an eye on what's coming in and out just for like one person or a family, let alone kind of a business. So what are your kind of key top tips for people, business owners, whether they're starting out or kind of at that point where they're looking at investment, to kind of boss their budget and kind of really be on what's going in and out?
So the first thing is looking at, if it's prior to setting up a business, a startup budget. So what, you know, aside from your personal expenses and knowing what you need to live off, and if it can be without revenue for a period of time as like as a family, or you've built up savings or whatever, that is helpful. But deciding then what you need to start it. And people think you need loads of money, and you really don't. And actually, some of your best business skills will come from starting small and bootstrapping. If you are handed 100 grand today to go and start a business, I suspect you'll spend it on the wrong things because it's kind of freely available. So actually, you know, in our journey, we spent a year bootstrapping. So we created a product on Instagram, we sold it, we took the revenue, we built our app. We built the early version of the app, and then we tested that, and then we got some more revenue in, and then we reinvested that back in. Some people would have just gone straight to investment, and we were like, no, like we'll kind of test it out. You think you need something, so you think you need a 10 grand PR deployment, and you actually don't. Like you might want £1,000 worth of help, but your decisions early on when you've not had to grind it out and spend that money are going to be different than later on. And so we actually found our investors loved the fact that we were bootstrapped first, because they felt that we'd respect the money and that we would really be careful about where we're going to deploy it. But when it comes to bossing your business budget, you have to have a handle on what's coming in and what's going out, because firstly, it's not a profitable business if more is going out than coming in. Now, caveat, and obviously Anoop will be far more adept at explaining this, but if you're in a growth business or a tech business, the idea is that you spend more than comes in because you're going for growth. But most businesses, you tend to want to bring in more than you are spending. And so do you know what those are? And you can do that on a piece of paper if you wanted to, but you can then put it into a simple spreadsheet, or obviously, you know, some really good software nowadays like Sage that you can input the numbers and it'll help you. But we every month review our business finances, and some of them are subscriptions that we couldn't do without, like Canva. I don't think I'd have a business if it wasn't for Canva. Like that woman can be a billionaire all day long. But sometimes there's been an extra bit of tech that we've not really used, and we thought, actually, let's kind of pull back on that. That like review on expenditure is really important, because firstly, if you're building a small business, you want it to be profitable. That's the thing that's going to, you know, help show that your business has got value. But likewise, if you're not spending enough and you're just piling up cash, maybe it's great in a service-based business where actually it's your time for money and you may as well take that out. But if you're not spending a lot, if you're not spending on people, if you're not spending on resources, on outsourcing, which are some of the things we've talked about with the pitch, then you're actually limiting your growth, because you're kind of holding on to everything and you're not using it to get bigger. And so using kind of professionals to help you with that cash flow management and be cash flow efficient is worth it. But doing it yourself first and practicing what you should spend on, test it, did it work, did it not, is a really good exercise, even if it, you know, if it's frustrating at first.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that comes from a fear, doesn't it? Like hoarding your money and like knowing that you need to spend to make more, but you're scared to spend what you've got. And I think that fear could be kind of easily overcome if actually founders understood where the wastage in their business is, and where they're wasting expense, and actually, you know, have a better handle on actually, no, this money is going here, and then based on that, I will get this ROI. So what tips like Laura, I'll come to you first and then we can hear from Anoop as well. What tips would you have for kind of founders who are at that stage and they don't have necessarily a handle on where they're wasting, for them to kind of understand what ROI they're getting on their expense and where they need to stop spending?
Well, the first, it comes back to your business goals and kind of when it comes to forecasting. And so for people that don't know what forecasting is, like forecasting your revenue, but it could be forecasting numbers. So for us, it might be, you know, app users or community members, but for other people, it might be, you know, items sold. you need to look at your forecasts and then think, how do I get to that number? And if you're hitting that number, then let's make the number higher. But then you kind of look at your expenses, and again, the software is really easy, but even just your bank account, your business bank, you'd be able to look at where you're spending money. And just some things are utility. So if you've got an office space that you absolutely need, or if you've got subscriptions that run your website, or hosting fees, those are just non-negotiables. If you didn't have those, you can't function. So park some that are just default expenses. But where you've then got optional expenses or optional money, really decide, is that expenditure, and this is the same with time as well, to be fair, it's money and time, is that moving a dial that's important to me in my business and or to future investors? Or is it a nice to have? And I just don't think there's a right answer. So I think the first thing is people shouldn't be overly worried about where they're spending money and not overthink it. But there's going to be some things that you look and it's just like a personal budget. Am I using that subscription? Do I need it? Could it be better redeployed? But the final thing is also testing. So having a go. So whether it's, for example, paid ads is the most obvious one. If paid ads is relevant for your business, or if you want to test it out, put some money in and test it. Do you get the results? Because if you blindly pay for ads and you never looked at whether it delivered your customers, it's a perfect example of you not getting ROI from it. However, a different one could be if you decided to get a contractor that helped you with your writing or your social or your design. What did that get you? Did it get you more time to go in to find more customers, to find some big deals because you weren't busy messing around on Canva, you actually had a designer? Or actually, was it not a good expense because you didn't really need it, it was nice to have? And it's just constant testing and not being too worried. But your income is your most powerful business building tool, because it's what you take to then deploy. Make sure it's going toward things that grow. So testing it and being really wary of sharks. There's a lot of people in early stage business trying to get you to spend because they're an advisor, a business advisor, a coach, a PR company. There's so many junior or early stage businesses think they need PR. We were one of them. And really the industry goes, so what? And so you could have deployed $5,000 into a PR company, but actually that wasn't the thing that was going to drive the numbers in your business. So I feel like that was really wishy-washy. I'm very sorry, everyone. I got a bit on a roll then, but hopefully the main thing you take away is not to worry about it, but test out your expenses and see what things drive ROI.
Yeah, not wishy-washy at all, Laura. Like loads of great tips in there. And 100% focus on what's going to move the needle for your business to get you to the next stage. Yeah. Anoop, we'll come to you, but actually we've got a couple of questions from the audience. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so I'd like to go to them. It'd be really great to hear from you, Anoop, on so somebody said, how important is it for a new business to have a balance sheet, and what is the purpose of the balance sheet?
Yeah, so a balance sheet is kind of everyone looks at the P&L because that tells you what your profit is, but your balance sheet, so it's great if you had 200 grand profit in a year, say, but your balance sheet actually tells you how much you owe out as well. So for those that don't know, a balance sheet, it kind of tells you what you have in hand, so what's in your bank, maybe like your furniture and bits and pieces that you own, and what money people owe you, but then it also tells you how much you owe out. So again, Laura mentioned that different types of businesses, like with tech, the scale ups, are not so worried about this balance sheet being will be positive, but their profit being low, because actually they're getting more and more investment. But the good thing about that is, it comes back to cash flow, because when you're looking at your balance sheet about what you have coming in and what you're going out, it's a very good kind of, they call it an acid test in terms of your net ratio. So if you've got, £100,000 coming in, but then you've got £200,000 coming out straight away to people you owe money to, then you're in a bit of difficulty. And actually, do you have to start looking at payment plans? Do you need to start talking to your suppliers and saying, actually, we need to spread this out a bit because I've got money coming in, I've got other projects coming on? Or do you need to think about, where clients had to think about CBILS loans and all those bits and pieces that they took on over the COVID period? And for those people that did, I think it's a great idea because it gave them a bit of a buffer. Even if you didn't need it, you could have repaid it back. Thinking about those types of bits and pieces. But a balance sheet, I think it's just as important as you grow. I think people do focus on the P&L side of things, but that balance sheet and knowing actually what is the kind of health of your business at any given point in time is valuable.
Fantastic. I'll do one more audience question because we did start a bit late and we had a few technical problems at the beginning. And then we'll round up. But this one, I think, would be for Laura. So what kind of forecasting did you do for your investment round, and how detailed was it?
So we did, we built a forecast in Excel, well, Google Docs, and it was a pretty simple one. And it was a 12-month, month by month, table with then a year two. So we only did 2 years, like Anoop said, like none of us know what's going to happen, and an investor just won't pay attention to it. And what we tried to do was take some existing numbers, because we weren't a brand new business. And I think when you're going for investment, I don't like it when you've not done anything and you just go and try and get money, because people go, well, because there's always testing. Even if you're not revenue generating, there's always ways of demonstrating that you've got product market fit, or are starting to, or you've pulled people, or you offer a service for free. So really think about showing traction, whether that's monetary traction or whether it's user traction. And so what we tried to do is take existing numbers, so realistic, and started to push some growth percentages through them. I am not accounting background. I'm not even finance, given I run a financial wellness platform. I'm words, I'm law, I'm legal. So it was hard for me, but Google was my friend, and a couple of accountants like Anoop had hit up that owed me a favor. And I was like, can you just look at this for me? But basically, it was a really, really simple one that just showed something like, for example, a bit of a forecast on sales. So it was website views, what we think the conversion would be to app download, what we think the conversion would be to premium subscriber, because initially actually the app wasn't live, so we had to have some what you call assumptions. When the app went live, we were able to put actuals through, so we realized actually conversion was a bit higher than we'd forecasted, so we could tweak that. And this was all before it got to investors, and we just put some growth numbers through that. And then those are user numbers, and we attached a monetary value to them. And then we came up with a budget basically that would help us then grow. So it changed a few times. We got lots of commentary, but it was basically saying, oh, we'd have some people in product and development, and we'd have some cost in growth testing, and push that through. And you ended up getting, it was always a negative, because for us, we were always intending to spend more than we were going to get in revenue. And it showed basically how long it would be until we ran out of money. I later learned that was your burn rate, and kind of that investors like go straight to that kind of thing. I was in lots of investors are open to you not knowing all of this, but there's a lot of help online about what they're kind of looking for. So it was really simple. It was what was coming in. It was what we would, because it was the money that you're asking for. So you come up with an amount that you think will help you get to the next stage, and you basically spend it in this budget. And you get asked questions on it, but the biggest thing that we always kept saying was, this is a forecast, like we're not sure, this could be completely off. Now, interestingly, we're one month post our pre-seed raise, we're starting to put our actuals in, at the moment we're not spending enough. So we said we were going to spend at this rate. It's slower than you think, so we're going to have to tweak it, and a couple of other numbers weren't quite right, so we just tweak it and we share it with them on a week by week basis. Interestingly, just quickly though, we have an investor, a fund that we share some like updates with, and they ask for 4 things a month. I give them more because I want to, because I give the wider board, and I think it's something like recurring revenue and cash, and that's probably it. And they don't, and what else do you need help with is what they ask. It's quite cool, so it's not as invasive as you perhaps think.
That's great. Thanks, Laura. And I can see Anoop kind of nodding there as well. And I think a really good tip to end on is basically call on as many favors as possible. And actually people do want to help you. And there's lots of advice out there. So we're going to have to round up there. I think we can kind of keep going, but like there's lots more we could talk about. But if anyone wants to kind of find any more tips or advice, obviously I've mentioned your TikTok channel, Financielle Times, Laura, and Haines Watts also have a great podcast called the Owning It series, where they talk to different business owners about exactly these types of journeys. So definitely check that out. And thank you both so much for your time, and really, really sorry about any kind of technical issues that we experienced, but I think we got through it. And thank you to everyone for joining us, and to Haines Watts for supporting the pitch this year and being a partner to us, because we couldn't do it without our partners. And if you are interested in the pitch, like I said, you can apply by the 31st of July on our website. And thanks for joining us, everyone, and we will see you soon. Take care.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes, thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.